Welcome to the weekly series of Caring Conversations Empowering Lives for Cancer Care. In this series of events, we come together along with eminent experts in the field to discuss and empower cancer patients as they fight their battle against the disease. In today's event, we will learn about a specific clinical trial that has improved survival of patients with a difficult to treat childhood brain tumor and for which there are no effective treatments. Then we will hear from our distinguished guest, Dr. Samir Guliani, about the role that participation in clinical trial plays for cancer patients and that can help cancer research in general. We would encourage you to ask questions to our experts by typing them in the comment section. We will take them up at the end of the session. Let's begin today with the session of Beat Cancer Facts. As we know, glioma or brain tumor is difficult to treat. There is a specific type of brain tumor known as diffuse midline gliomas, and it includes diffuse intrinsic pontine glioma with a mutation called H3K27M that is particularly aggressive. And the patients have a median overall survival of only 11 months, 11 to 15 months. These tumors are most frequently found in children and young adults. The only available treatment is radiation, and even that is difficult as the tumors are located in brain regions that are intrinsic and have critical functions. Hundreds of clinical trials have failed to improve outcomes for this specific patient group. Now, recently, for the first time, researchers at University of Michigan Health Rogel Cancer Center and the Chardkar Pediatric Brain Tumor Center have found a potential drug candidate that improves outcomes for these patients. This compound is called ONC201 and it has nearly doubled the survival of these patients when compared to previous patients. In two clinical trials testing ONC201 with a total of about 71 patients with H3K27M mutated diffuse midline gliomas, the median overall survival was nearly 22 months for the tumors that had not recurred at the time of enrollment. Almost a third of the patients lived longer than 2 years, which is a significant breakthrough for these kind of patients. Interestingly, ONC21 was initially designed to target dopamine receptors, which is upregulated in many different tumors. But this molecule was found to pass the blood brain barrier, which is an important event for the brain tumor drugs, to design brain tumor drugs. And this molecule was able to pass the blood brain barrier. So it was tested in many glioblastomas, but the trials were not successful. But recently, researchers at University of Michigan have found a potential drug candidate that improves outcomes for these patients. Hello, I'm sorry for the technical glitch, but I'm back again. So I was talking about the ONC 201, which was initially designed to target the dopamine receptor, but because of its property of able to pass the blood-brain barrier, it was chosen to treat glioblastoma patients. And it was working only for a small number of patients which carried the H3K27M mutation. Without understanding why it worked in better in these patients, a phase 1 trial was started in children and young adults with H3K27 mutated DMG. Meanwhile, the authors of this paper, Koshman and Sriram Veneti, they were trying to figure out what was happening in these tumor cells that were giving them the better results. Throughout the trial, they had collected cerebrospinal fluid from the patients and they used this fluid to analyze the metabolic changes in these patients and found that ONC 201 got into the tumor cells and affected mitochondria. Patients who responded to this drug had an increase in the metabolite called L2HG produced by the tumor cells. Koshman called the finding very much unexpected. The team found that increased L2HG reversed the epigenetic signals that caused the tumor cells to differentiate and divide less. The longer the patients were on ONC 201, more the tumors exhibited this epigenetic reversal. That is, the factor that was making the tumor differentiate that was reversed. And this could explain why the patient population was responding so well to the drug. The tumors have this epigenetic change and the mutation that was there was being reversed by ONC 201. He also said, Koshman, the main researcher for this trial, he said that for now we have this patient population that didn't have a drug before, and now we see many of the tumors responding. We have a platform to build on, and we can explain why it's working. This paper is published in Cancer Discovery, a journal of the American Association for Cancer Research. As is evident from this study, clinical trials or researchers that studies new tests and treatment and evaluates their effects on human health outcomes are the bedrock for any innovative treatment for a disease. To discuss more on this, we have with us today Dr. Samir Guliani, with whom we will be discussing more on what is a clinical trial and why should patients be encouraged to participate in one. Dr. Samir Guliani is the Associate Vice President at Innoplexis, who is responsible for the healthcare ecosystem and total quality management. He has over 20 years of industry experience in various roles, working in global and Indian pharmaceutical companies, extending across medical affairs, clinical research, pharmacovigilance, and commercial roles. He has worked towards successful launches of various innovative biosimilars and generic molecules from inception to bedside. In an earlier role, he was associated with direct patient care as a board certified family medicine doctor. Welcome, Dr. Guliani, to our event. We eagerly anticipate the insights and knowledge that you were poised to share with us today. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Tapsi. Thank you for having me.
So, Dr. Samir, let's start with the basics. Why are clinical trials needed?
Okay. So, clinical trials, if you go to see, are they are a part of clinical research. They're a part of medical research. Clinical trials are very vital today, where we are in the world with all the medications, all the medical devices, the new techniques of surgeries, new drug combinations which have been coming up. All of these have gone undergone various rigorous phases of clinical research, and these are clinical trials which we are talking about are the first time in humans which we are discussing. But before they even reach human, There's a lot of preclinical research which happens at the labs, at the animal model. Only after all these molecules or chemicals which have been identified or intervention have been identified, do they make it an entry into the human world. So it's clinical trials are a very, very vital aspect of where today we stand with anything to do with medications, to do with surgery like robotic surgery. All of this has come through various trials at different time points, which have been beneficial for the human mankind. That is what clinical trials are, a very short brief of what they really are.
Okay. And we sometimes hear about the different phases of a clinical trial. How
True.
do they contribute to our understanding of the treatment effectiveness?
Okay. So we need to understand what is the goal of a clinical trial. Is the goal of a clinical trial prevention? Is the goal an observation of what a treatment is doing? Is it an active intervention? Is it a new drug? Is it a new medicine? Is it a new intervention which is being done for the human mankind? But we cannot just assume that what happened in the preclinical stage or happened in animal models is directly applicable for humans as well. It is the health and safety of a human which we need to keep first in mind. We need to ensure that the benefits outweigh the risk. So, to understand all of these, the regulatory bodies across the world decided to have clinical research or trials in a very systematic format, and they broke it down into different phases. Depending upon the kind of condition where a person is involved, it was divided into four phases. And at phase one is primarily, if it is not an oncological indication, it is usually done in a healthy volunteer. Here, healthy people are asked to participate in a research. And I always emphasize on the part that it is a volunteering part. It is never to be enforced or put on somebody the wrong way. It is the volunteering of a healthy human being for the phase one. And as we go subsequently ahead, it is the volunteering of a patient in a trial. So phase one primarily is a group of 5 to 20 to 30 people, where for the first time that this intervention is brought into a human. And here we would want to understand the safety and identify what kind of side effects or adverse events are happening in a healthy person who doesn't have this indication. Once that phase one is cleared, the trials usually move on to phase two. Here, the new drug or the treatment is given to a larger population. Now that we've understood how it works, if it is safe in the volunteers, we identify the right kind of people who have this disease or indication. And about 100 to 200 such patients are asked to volunteer in this study. At this time, we like to understand to see if the drug is really effective in the kind of people who have this disease. Safety is a given every time, every phase. Safety of the drug is always monitored and measured as one key parameter. After the phase two gets completed and the data is shared to the regulatory bodies, the sponsoring body usually decides to go into a phase three. Now, phase three, we've already reached the stage where we've finished, a smaller sample size in phase two. We've understood it is effective and it is safe depending upon the doses which were tried during phase two. We get into phase three, where a much larger population of people are asked to volunteer in the study. Depending upon the kind of indication it is, it could range anywhere between 1,000 to 3,000 to 5,000 patients. Now, it's a large clinical trial. This is a time when we really understand how effective or the efficacy of a particular intervention, a drug, is happening. Patients are monitored very critically during the entire trial phase. They monitor for the side effects. Simultaneously, usually we compare it with the standard of care. We try to see if this new intervention is really making a difference. Is it more beneficial? Is it at par? Is it less beneficial to similar treatment? All of this information is collated together for the efficacy, for the safety, for the right dose of these patients, and that data is submitted to regulatory bodies. After completion of phase 3, when the regulatory bodies have reviewed the entire data and they see or they feel that this drug is safe and efficacious under normal circumstances, they give the approval so that this drug is marketed. Now, when the drug is marketed, it is freely available to pretty much anyone who's prescribed that new intervention, that new drug. So at that time, there is no controlled environment of clinical trials. This is known as the phase 4 part of the study, which is usually the post marketing surveillance study or post authorization safety study. This is when the company or the sponsor tracks the safety in the general population. During clinical trials, there are a lot of parameters which a volunteer has to adhere to participate in the trial. But once it's freely available in the market where it is approved and legally sold, it is available to anyone who's prescribed the medication. So that time, the companies or the sponsors would like to understand in the real world how is their new intervention really working. So that's the four different kind of phases which are there apart, which are a part of the clinical trials primarily.
Okay. So you touched upon two important factors, Dr. Guliani. One was the patient's, it's always voluntary and patient needs to sign an informed consent form, right? And the second part was that even though sometimes we think these are experiments, it's not a guinea pig type of experiment, right? The patient data is always, the patients are monitored for their safety, and they are taken better care of, if I may say, in terms of other treatment procedures.
That's very true, Dr. Tapsi. Before it even reaches a patient, there is a lot of various levels of diligence, surveillance. It's done at the regulatory body first of the country, where the protocols are submitted, it is reviewed, and then only after approval by the ethics committees does it go to the next level, where individual hospitals which are participating they go through the review board. After the review board approves it, only then it does it even reach to a patient through a doctor for participation. So a lot of scrutiny is done. I think the old terminology of guinea pig is far out of the picture now, because a lot of stringent rules have come in. Safety, as I always say, the benefits have to be for the patient over the risk. So all of these things are considered primarily before it reaches even the phase of asking a person to volunteer for the study.
So you mentioned that the patient can participate with the help of their physician, right? The treating oncologist. So do they play a part in the patient who choose to enroll in these clinical trials?
So as like we need to understand one thing. For most of the patients, their main source of information is their treating physician, and if it is a cancer patient, it is an oncologist. And even for an oncologist to actually ask a patient to be a part of a trial, like I said previously, it undergoes an entire process of getting the ethics committee approval, the independent review committees to approve it. Only then does it reach a patient to a patient by a doctor. Now, why a doctor is really important is because he really understands the patient. He or she has been with that patient, is his treating doctor, and he knows what journey the cancer patient must have gone through. Only when he has identified that there is a new clinical trial and all the parameters which are required for participation, then he gets becomes a part and asks the patient to participate. Because nobody, it's just not that do you want to participate in a clinical trial. There's a laundry list of inclusion and exclusion criteria. You need to meet all the inclusion criterias, and you need to be without, and all the exclusion criteria also need to be met for a person to be a participating in a trial. And the best source of information for a particular patient is his doctor. Because once the research starts, let's understand, this is research, this is trial. there are going to be new findings coming out. The treatment is going to be new. The intervention is going to be new. Throughout the entire clinical trial, the doctor has to be your partner in this journey. It, anyways, when you are a patient, you are very apprehensive of anything new. You need a partner who can hold you, guide you, and help you understand what is happening in the journey. Let's also accept every drug usually comes with an adverse event or a side effect. Those need to be managed. Who is going to manage this? Hence, it is very critical that an oncologist or your treating physician is a part of the journey for, and he or she is primarily responsible for advocating to a patient who could be potentially a part of the clinical research.
Okay, a lot of things to keep in mind. But are there any specific factors which a cancer patient or the family needs to consider when they decide that they can enroll in a clinical trial?
Yeah, definitely there are a lot of factors. One unfortunate truth would be that he or she is not being managed with the best treatment which is currently available. But there is a ray of hope that a new drug or a new intervention is coming in. We know that the journey of cancer patient is already very difficult for them. They have to go under a lot of treatments, many side effects, and now when they are at a stage where they are not getting the maximum benefit of the current treatment, do they feel that is this the end for me? But no, there is a ray of hope by participating in clinical trials, and for this to get that medical link, that the treating physician plays a critical role. Of course, they need to first be allayed of any of the fears which they have, because today also which medication they are getting has come because somebody in the past was a participant of a clinical trial, was somebody who underwent this disease. There was a new drug tried in him or her. It cleared all the levels of scrutiny and then it came in the market. So we need to first thank people who were part of trials before. And today, as a patient, they get a chance to participate in clinical trials and help improve medical research. So what they need to take into consideration is, of course, all, if the trial has been approved by all the regulatory bodies, by the ethics committee, the doctor is in favor of the patient participating in this trial, where he really feels that this intervention will make a difference to their life. They need to understand completely, for how long will the study go on, how many times will they need to come to the clinic or to the hospital to get tested, do they need to do anything new other than what they are currently doing in their routine life to ensure that they adhere to the entire protocol of the clinical trial. So there are a lot of factors which go into play before a person can participate in a clinical trial, and this is all primarily to ensure that the sample size of the patients who is representing the larger population prove that this drug is valuable or not. So for that, they need to follow the entire protocol, understand the entire inclusion exclusion criteria, the adverse event side effects, how will it be managed, will they continue to get management after the trial is over, what happens if during the trial there is a safety concern. They need to understand each and every nitty gritty associated with this, and then only after making an informed decision should they participate in a trial.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. That makes sense. And as you mentioned, there is obviously an altruistic benefit for a clinical trial because it is helping advance cancer research and newer medicines are coming out. But for the patients participating in the clinical trial, what could be the potential benefit that they may be expecting from it?
So the potential benefit immediately for them would be they are going to get a new treatment. They're going to get a different treatment which has the potential to prevent, treat, cure an indication which they're going through.
Or
They're
improve their
getting
quality of life?
a new way, improve the quality of life, definitely. Because right now, when they are being considered to participate in this trial, that means there's something which probably is currently not working, and or it may not be the best, or this may be a new ray of hope for them. So that is the time where the clinical trial participant needs to understand that yes, not only will they benefit, but more importantly, apart from their benefit, they will help advance, the medical research, and thousands and lakhs of patients in the future will benefit for their part. So it is also a pride for them that they are a part of advancing medical research.
Yeah, definitely. That is really something. And sometimes, even if the doctor is not suggesting them the clinical trial, can they find out? Is there any source of information where they can find out that these are the clinical trials that are ongoing, and they can discuss with their doctor whether they should be participating in it or not?
So yes, there is a lot of wealth of information available on the various websites, the regulatory bodies, company websites, apps are available where people can really go and do simple queries and find out. But that's not the most optimal method. It is good to learn about this. It is good to be very well aware of what are the new advances, what are the new therapies, if they are eligible or not. All of these things, a lot of information like the clinicaltrials.gov website, the EMEA website, the CTRI website in India. These are various websites of all the clinical trials which are registered with the regulatory bodies. Like I said earlier, all the trials need to be registered with the local regulatory bodies. Only then they can be a part of including patients. So yes, information is out there, but that is only superficial guidance for them. They really need to involve their treating physician because, like I said earlier, they understand both sides, the patient very well as what the research is talking about, and they help link the two together. And that's very critical aspect in this for the patient as well as the treating physician.
Okay. So to surmise, the patient would definitely, it is obviously beneficial for them to at least check out if there are clinical trials available, if the current treatment options are not working for them, and they can discuss this with their doctor so that they can participate. And then, of course, clinical research develops more with this. The drug discovery cycle is, of course, the clinical trial is an integral part of that. So, anything more that you would like to add as parting sentences, Dr. Guliani?
No, I think a lot of opportunity is there for patients as well. We use a lot of limited information sometimes and we come to judgments. But I would suggest that anybody who voluntarily wants to participate should learn, should visit such websites and regulatory bodies and apps, get that information, have a very open discussion with your treating physician. It always needs to be a two-way communication because in the end it's about the patient and the doctor, both of them are responsible. So you should have a very open discussion, and if eligible, should consider yourself participating in trials if you feel your current state requires you participating. So I would end with that by saying that thanks to everybody in the past who have helped advance medical research, and going ahead, if people do continue to participate in clinical trials, it will be very beneficial for human mankind.
Yeah, thanks. And it's also important to understand that it's all a part of a regulated process. So, whatever data is collected from clinical trials, these are all scrutinized and analyzed very rigorously, and then only a new drug can come out into the market.
True, very true. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Guliani, once again for sharing with us your insights and expertise. We appreciate your time.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Tam. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. With this, we come to an end to today's event. Thank you all for taking part in this engaging session. We look forward to seeing you again next week when we will have with us Dr. Mallika Tiwari, who will be discussing with us the current standard of care for colorectal cancer patients. Thank you so much. See you next week. Take care.